and the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this second session of Senior Preview Day. The topic in this session is going to be a career technical education, and we're going to look at what happens in the technology division. On our campus at Cerritos College, we actually have a lot of career technical education. So we actually have two deans that are in charge of career technical education. I do about half, and we have another dean, Sandy Marks, who does the other half. Oh, I see a lot of people still popping in. So I'm just going to rephrase what I just said, which is welcome to session 2 today of the Senior Preview Day. My name is Nick Real. I'm going to present what we do in the technology division. And in the technology division, we focus on career technical education. On the Cerritos College campus, there's a lot of career technical education. So we actually have two deans, one dean that deals with mostly health occupation, and myself who deals with mostly with more like career type of education. So I have a presentation. I'm gonna start by asking you a question from one of the poll, which is, do you know someone looking for a full-time job right now? And I should have actually added, do you know someone looking for a full-time job with benefits and with at least 40 hours a week? That's kind of what I should have put in there. So I'll give you a minute to click. So that's more than about 75% that have voted. So to share the result of the polling, the polling question, that's about 9 people that are like, yeah, I know somebody who's looking for a job. So I'm gonna start sharing with you the presentation that I have and give you an idea of what we do in our division. So give me a second to share my screen. All right. So now you should see a presentation that says technology division. So if you're not seeing it, let me know. So again, the campus here at Cerritos College, we have a technology division and a health occupation division, and we've kind of shared the programs between the two divisions. So in this case, for the technology division, we have what you would call more traditionally trades, for example, welding, like most people would identify that with trade. And then we have other areas, some of them more identified with transfer, like for example, architecture, and then others that are somewhere in between, like cosmetology, for example. So those are the different departments that we have. So if you're interested in more details, if you go to cerritos.edu, you can type technology or tech, TECH, and you'd be able to see all those programs. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, a lot of you, that's your job, that basically defining what it is that people are going to do going forward. And degree is something that most of you are familiar with, whether it's the associate degree, the bachelor's degree, the master's degree, the doctoral degree. Those are basically the traditional steps of people working in education. They're going through those steps. Certificate is something that maybe is not as familiar to some of you. And it's basically something saying that you've done an amount of training in preparation for a job. So that's really one of the main differences. Certificate of achievement, as we have them here at Cerritos College, is about getting a job. And we don't mean getting a job, you're getting a job and that's it, you're done with your education. We mean like you're able to get a job now, and maybe you can continue going to school part-time and finish your degree without having to make a large amount of loans and having this debt burden. One idea is you kind of learn as you earn, and you're able to earn because you got a certificate that was able to get you a job that gets you a better job than just, let's say, working at In-N-Out. And I mean In-N-Out because there's literally an In-N-Out across the street here. So This is a definition that comes from Indeed.com. It's a great website that you can look at to see what are jobs out there. I would recommend using that, kind of getting an idea of what's out there. In community colleges, in California community colleges, the approved certificates of achievement are noted on the student's transcript. And a lot of industrial companies know about that, and they'll require students to provide their transcript to make sure that they did finish their certificate of achievement. So that's what we talk about here in terms of certificate. Now, there's a different term that's called certification, and certification is definitely different than certificate. Certification, if you look at the website Burning Glass, which is a very good website in terms of looking at trends for employment, long-term trends in the United States. Certification is more something that you get from an association, from a company, from somebody who's established some type of requirement to be able to pass that certification. So you may be familiar with like the A+ certification from CompTIA. That's something that's offered in high schools that have some type of a computer type of pathways. So here on campus, we'll have, for example, ASC certification. That's the sticker that's the patch that you see here on the right side of the screen. Those ASC certification are for automotive technicians. So when they do drivability, like they take the drivability class, if they're able to pass the requirements of the certification for ASC, they get certification from ASC. As they gather multiple ASC certification, they can be certified as a master technician. And that's usually how they make more money at a dealership. In terms of welding, one of the main certifications we prepare them here at Cerritos College, the first one in the series, if you want, is the AWS D1. So that one is organized by the American Welding Society, and that's what we would call the structural welding certification. And that's what you would need to be able to weld on those buildings that you see downtown LA. So a lot of construction over there downtown LA. That's the type of certification that would get you a foot in the door. And I'm literally not kidding. The moment you have that certification, you would get multiple job offers because there are huge shortages in welding here in Southern California. Other ones that are organized by organization, for example, SolidWorks, which is a private company selling software. Well, they have different levels of certification. So like the associate in mechanical design is something that you could achieve taking classes here at Cerritos College, taking your entry-level SolidWorks. You could pass it. If you're good at it and you spend a good amount of time, you could pass it. And then, if it takes you a little more time, you could take your advanced SolidWorks class here at Cerritos College, and eventually you'd be able to get the associate in mechanical design. The professional in mechanical design, that definitely takes a lot of work beyond what we are teaching at Cerritos. If you took every single class we offer in SolidWorks, you'd be pretty close, but you would still have to work on your own to achieve that certification. Now, with that professional mechanical design SolidWorks certification, same thing. Companies would be you would get multiple offers from company to get a job doing mechanical design. And then you probably have seen other ones like the Google Data Analytics certificate. That's more forward thinking, that's more long-term, that's more advanced, but same thing, you get that type of certification, you'd be able to get job offers, no question asked. So I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second and see if there are any questions. If anybody wants to ask any question about, certificate versus certification and versus degrees. Any question?
Let's see here. So far, we do not have any. We'll give it another minute.
And you can type them in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask me the question. Either way would work.
All right, I believe we can move on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you another question. So this is question number 2. And on that poll, I'm asking you how many job openings for welders are there within 25 miles of Norwalk, according to Indeed.com. So if you went to Indeed.com and you type welder, how many job openings you think you would see on that website? So I see about a third of the attendees have responded. And this is a 25-mile radius from Norwalk, which is where Cerritos College is located. Okay, so more than half have voted, so that gives us kind of like a good overview of what you think in terms of how many job openings for welders within the 25-mile radius. So I'll end the poll right here, and more than about half of you say there's probably about 100 jobs. So I typed this question about a week ago, and at the time those are kind of like the numbers that I saw in there, and 1,800 was actually how many there were at that time. But I went back this morning, and I'm going to share my screen if you give me a second. Okay, so hopefully you see my screen, and I typed welder, in Indeed.com, Norwalk, 25 miles, and there's about 15 jobs on the first page, and there's about 138 pages. So it's way over 2,000 today. This will vary from day to day. And for an entry-level welder, as you can see, the price range is usually around $20 to $25. It depends which one you're looking at, what they're doing. That's kind of what you're going to see. A certified welder was going to be welding on the TIG process and is going to do aerospace welding. That's more like you see here, like in the $65 an hour range. And typically those jobs include overtime. Pretty much all of them want you to work 10 hours a day and on Saturdays. So at that rate, people easily make $120,000, $150,000 per year. And you can type anything you want. You could type anthropologist, you could type anything you want in Indeed.com. It would give you an idea of how many jobs are out there. So I'm going to get back to the presentation. Okay. And we are talking about certificate versus certification. It's definitely something important in our field, just finishing a certificate of achievement and gathering certifications along the way. Now, Burning Glass here tells us that, in theory, the industry certification had to be an element in addressing the skills gap, yet in practice, they often fall short. So there's a huge ecosystem of industry certifications out there, and there are some that are real and some that are not real. You probably know that, it's probably obvious. But the one that we focus on at Cerritos College, they are the real ones. They are the ones that actually get your job. So an ASE certification in automotive is what you need. An ICAR certification in collision repair is what you need. A CompTIA certification in IT is what you need. So along the way, to make sure that that's what we do here at Cerritos. So another topic that might be of interest to you is licensing. So in the area I supervise, there's only one program that requires licensing, and that's cosmetology. But in the other healthcare fields, there are several that require some type of licensing. So in licensing, we prepare our students for the exam, but the students do take the exam with the state. So in the case of cosmetology, there's a site in Glendale. The students have to make that appointment on their own to get their license, or to attempt to get their license. And in the case of cosmetology and esthetician, there's a practical exam and there is a theoretical exam. So students have to pass 2 exams in a way to be able to get their license. And to be able to be employed in a salon or in a spa to provide the services, they have to have their license. So the ones that don't have their license yet, they can work as a receptionist or some other job like that, but they cannot be the one performing the act on the client. So that's something also to keep in mind for some of those careers. That's something that you have to have. And that applies even to engineers, a registered engineer. So for example, my background is in engineering. I'm a registered engineer in Germany. So to practice engineering in Germany, I'm registered over there. In the United States, I'm not registered, so I wouldn't be able to sign off on plans for the city if we are doing an engineering project, a bridge in a specific city. You would have to have a licensed professional engineer from the state of California to be able to sign off on those documents. So licensing is something different. And for our students, and maybe the students you encounter, why would you choose a certificate of achievement over a degree? Now, we always tell them that you want a degree, you want to transfer, and in the long term, you want your bachelor's degree. I mean, that's the end goal. We want everybody to do that. But for some of them, that may be, they may need intermediate goals. And the intermediate goal may be, I'm going to get my certificate of achievement, I'm going to get a job, and I'll continue taking classes, get my AA degree, and eventually transfer. So the questions or the advice that we may give is, how quickly do you need to earn your credential and how quickly do you need a job? What is going to be your work balance and, the balance between work and school? For some of them, maybe they work in the evening and they come to school during the day, or they work during the day and they come to school in the evening. A lot of the classes in the technology division are either in the evening or on the weekends because we know that people have jobs during the day. What field are you working in? I mean, if you want to be a welder, you can be an entry-level welder for a commercial company making minimum wage. I worked for a fabricator in Gardena. We would train welder in 2 days, but those were basically MIG welders that would be doing welds that do not need to be certified, that do not have structural requirements. So the pay rate is not very much because the level of skill needed for that is not very high. But while you're coming to school and trying to get your real license as an AWS D1 welder because you want to be a structural welder, that may be good enough. That earns you some money until you get that credential. And once you have that credential, that's what allows you to go to the $25 an hour and then keep taking your general education classes. So that's something that we share with our students. How far do you want to advance in your career? If you get your certificate of achievement, you're not going to advance very far. So we make sure to tell our students that, human resources, when they look for production supervisor or some kind of a lead, they're going to want to see that AA or they're going to want to see that BA. So we encourage everybody to continue their studies. Where are they in their career? We get a lot of returning students, people maybe that are in their 40s and want to get a job that pays them more because they're kind of stuck at the bottom rung of the pay scale where they work at, or people who have bachelor's degree and just cannot get a job that's better than, let's say, a Starbucks job. They want to do something else. So they'll come back and they'll take classes so they can get a credential that will launch them on a better trajectory in some kind of a full-time job with benefits. And then, some of them have a licensing requirements. If you're not doing well with tests or you're afraid of tests, well, maybe that's not for you. At the end of the day, we want to let the students know about everything in front of them so that they don't make the wrong choice. And then the other thing that I wanted to make sure you knew is that, maybe people have a negative image of the trades, but the low-end level jobs, are kind of scarce in LA and Orange County. They've been mostly exported to other countries. And the jobs that we have are usually more on the high end, more like on the technician level. And you can see, I was looking when I was preparing this presentation, collision repair, you may think, collision repair, nobody's making any money doing that. Well, an experienced collision estimator is going to make between $65,000 and $85,000 a year. So when you get into an accident and you get your car to the shop, the person that comes around with their electronic clipboard and do the assessment for your insurance company, I mean, that's what they're making. And, that's not bad. In terms of job openings, this is just for one sector. That's just for manufacturing, and that's just from LA and Orange County. That's some data I received recently from the Center of Excellence, which is part of the community college doing research on jobs. You can see the employers with the most job openings in the area. Those are all companies with very good benefits in terms of retirement, in terms of healthcare, in terms of everything, like Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. Those are companies you probably have heard of, Boeing, SpaceX. They have really good packages, so to speak. Where are they located? Well, there's definitely a cluster not too far from here in the El Segundo, Redondo Beach, Hawthorne area, and that's where your aerospace companies are. And towards Orange County, like in the Anaheim, Santa Ana area, and a little further in the Irvine area. Those are the typical cities where you'll find manufacturing, and in LA, obviously. So now going down the list of the different programs that we have, I pulled the average wage from a database called EMSI. So it's called Economic Modeling. It's a database that we have a subscription for. So this is fresh data that I got a couple of weeks ago, and how many postings in LA and Orange County. So architectural drafters, which is what you would do if you have an AA degree in architecture, it is not bad, $25 an hour. And a lot of students will do that while they pursue a architecture transfer type of program. Auto body and related repairs, the entry level, again, around $20 an hour, about 927 unique postings in LA and Orange County. So if you have a student that loves to fix cars, this is a picture of one of our students that's working on the front left side of his car, wants to make sure it matches the color of his car. I mean, for some students, this is a great opportunity, and it's a great stepping stone to a better job in the automotive industry. Auto tech. So those are the people that are basically repairing the inside of your car. So when you go to a dealership and you've got that engine light on your dashboard and you're not sure what it is, or your car is not starting all the time and you've got some problem with the ignition, all students get prepared for that. So at Cerritos College, we are particular that we have industry tracks with the major manufacturers. So we have, if you can see the back of my office, you can see those license plates there. You could see, Ford, GM, Subaru, Nissan, Audi, Mercedes. We have specific programs in partnership with those companies. So our students learn from our instructors, but they also learn on the databases from those companies where they have a lot of very good teaching, if you want, a lot of good simulations about how a car works. So those students will basically work for 9 weeks at the dealership. So it's kind of like an apprenticeship model, if you want. They'll work 9 weeks at the dealership, and then they'll come here and take classes for 9 weeks at Cerritos College. Then they'll go back to the dealership for 9 weeks, come back to Cerritos College for 9 weeks, and they'll do that for 2 years. So within those 2 years, they'll be able to achieve about 80% of the requirements for technicians in those brands. So like a GM technicians that work on your car needs to have 100% on their technical requirements from GM. We at Cerritos College are able to train our students to about 80% of that, which is really, really good. Which means that when those students, after the end of the 2 years, get a full-time job, they're pretty close to be a full technician at those dealerships. And those dealerships, again, typically pay good wages because it's very difficult to attract students to stick to the requirements of this program. Getting the 80% may seem easy, but it's definitely not easy. It takes a lot of work to get there. And those dealerships do not want to let go of our students. Typically, every student that enters that program gets a job, usually at the dealership they're doing their internship at the end of the program. And we have dealerships where we have long-term relationships for dating over 30 years that basically take 2 of our students every 2 years so that they can continuously have technicians ready for when some are going to retire, because there's an aging workforce in technology and in those fields in general. So in general, the students will get the job after that 2 years apprenticeship. Any questions so far about those automotive fields I was talking about? Max, are there any questions in the chat?
There are none.
Okay. All right, so I'll keep going then. So that's automotive. Cerritos College is well known for that. Our shop, if you have a chance to visit it, is second to none. There's no dealership around. Longo Toyota, I have to say, they have a bigger shop than we do. But the Lexus Toyota on the 60 freeway, they have a much bigger shop than we do. But for most of those other dealers, they actually don't even have a shop as big as we do. Believe it or not. We have a giant shop. And we have every single piece of equipment that our students need to train for those jobs. So lots of jobs in that field. And it's kind of the same as the other ones. They can kind of get going even before they start the program, working, let's say, as lube technicians at a oil change type of establishment. And they'll gain some good experience that they can use when they start our programs. That's automotive. Cosmetology, there's actually 2 main jobs in that field. The one that's called cosmetologist, which you would think as a hairdresser, the entry-level wage is not that high. It's around $18 an hour, but you got to think about the tips that they get. And if they are placed in a good salon, those tips are usually way more than the hourly wage. So that's something you got to remember when you look at those numbers. There's also a fair amount of jobs in spas doing the job of an esthetician, and that's more like in the skincare business as opposed to the hair care business. The cosmetologist needs to have about 1,600 hours of instruction here at Cerritos College. The skin specialist about 600 hours. So typically you can do your esthetician curriculum in 2 semesters. So if you come this summer, we have a new cohort starting in the summer. By Christmas, they'll be done. On the other hand, the cosmetology typically takes 3 semesters. So that one, if you start on January 1, you could be done by Christmas, but that would require almost perfect attendance. So cosmetology takes a little longer than skincare, which is what we call esthetician. And that one, the curriculum, the proof of training, if you want, that we give them with either the 1,600 hours or the 600 hours, allows them to take the test to be licensed. So they still have to have that last step, which is they have to get a license from the state of California. Engineering design technology, that's what I was talking about in terms of certification early on. That one is like, for example, learning how to use SolidWorks. So SolidWorks is a software that allows you to design solid models, and from those solid models, be able to extract blueprints. There is a large demand for those jobs, again, in LA and Orange County. And that's because we have such a dense manufacturing network in those 2 counties. One may think that manufacturing is in Ohio or in Pennsylvania or a state like that. But believe it or not, LA and Orange County has the largest concentration of manufacturing jobs and manufacturing companies in the whole United States. Now, it wasn't always like that. If you go back in time, other states had larger number of jobs in manufacturing. But unfortunately, for some of those other states like Pennsylvania and Ohio, globalization has has basically destroyed so many jobs in those areas that their number of jobs has gone way down. Here in Southern California, because our manufacturing jobs were advanced, they were in the aerospace sector, satellite making, a lot of jobs in medical industry manufacturing. Those jobs have remained. The lower level jobs, kind of like at the B1 factory in Pico Rivera, if you know somebody maybe who used to work there, or at Rockwell in Downey, those jobs that were more low level in assembling, those jobs are gone as well. They're no longer in Southern California. But the aerospace jobs that, LA, Orange County builds half of the satellites that are orbiting this Earth right now. I mean, most of them are made here. And with SpaceX going full force building rockets, there's really high demand in those areas. So all the little subcontractors that are, and large and small subcontractors that are in the area, require people to produce all those parts that go on all those pieces of equipment. And therefore, there is a high demand in jobs like engineering technology, where you design or you help in designing or producing those parts that go on all those complex pieces of equipment. So SolidWorks is the premier software that's used nowadays, but there's also other software that we teach that's a little less industrial, like AutoCAD or Inventor or SketchUp, and there's a variety of them. There are jobs for that. I'm always surprised when I see the job offers, but there's still jobs for all those. So again, about 2,400 postings in LA and Orange County. New product development, there's actually a large network of small companies in Southern California that design new products. So in new product development, we have a few classes to kind of help our students prepare for that. Instead of working on small parts of large subsystems like in aerospace, new product development is more working on critical parts of smaller subsystems. So there are jobs for that. There's a specific nomenclature for that. It definitely requires more creativity to be in that field, but we've been pretty successful at Cerritos at getting our students to take a few classes in that kind of like subfield of engineering design technology, and to be able to get jobs in those fields. You may have heard of like industrial design. This is similar to industrial design, but more at the applied level for actual products. So that's kind of what new product development is on this campus at Cerritos College. And then we have another specialty, which is called engineering technology. Now, engineering technology is different from engineering. And I may feel like I'm splitting hair at this point, but I just want to make sure you know the difference between engineering technology and engineering. Engineering is if you want, the job of engineer. And typically what that requires for us here at Cerritos College is somebody registering in engineering classes. And engineering classes, for a lot of them, have prerequisite of calculus or physics, advanced physics, calculus-based physics. And people will transfer to an engineering program. So for example, when I used to teach part-time at Cal Poly Pomona in their engineering department, all the students that came there already had taken their calculus-based physics, their calculus differential equation, and all those classes. And we are now in their third year and their fourth year learning more practical aspects of engineering. What we do at Cerritos is we teach engineering technology for the jobs of technicians. So typically, somebody with a 2-year degree would be working with engineers in actually taking the engineer's idea and putting them into practice. That's kind of what those jobs are. So the entry-level wage may not be that high, but once the engineering technician gets a spot in the company and starts becoming somebody that's critical for the development of products, their wage will rise fairly quickly. Now, it's not something that there is thousands of jobs out there. You see 2462. But it's still a good option for somebody who, let's say, would have a blockage with calculus, basically. So for some students, when they go from basic algebra to calculus, it's a different way of thinking. And for some of them, there's a blockage, you can't get there. Well, that doesn't mean they can't do an engineering job. They can be an engineering technician and not have to worry about that more advanced mathematics. As an engineer, I can tell you that calculus is not used anywhere. Calculus was replaced by computers even when I started my career, and I'm 55. So if you think about it, there's really nobody left out there that's using calculus on a daily basis to design anything in engineering. Even when I entered the workforce, computers were already doing those calculations. Now, for my parents' generation, that's different. There were engineers who were using calculus on a daily basis because they didn't have the computers yet. But nowadays, there's pretty much nobody using calculus on a real job out there. But we still, educational system have put this barrier that prevents some people to being an engineer and sometimes getting a job as an engineering technician and continuing in engineering technology, which is not the same as engineering. So Cal State LA has a degree in engineering technology. You can get that degree, and I guarantee you, your job title will say engineer in private industry, because in private industry, they know very well that calculus is really not something they're going to pay you to do. Any questions about that, about the difference between engineering design technology, and engineering technology? Because there is really a difference between all those fields. And with the experience I've had in industry before coming to Cerritos College, I could answer any question if you have.
We'll wait about a minute. I've also allowed chat to unmute themselves, so if anyone wants to communicate that way. All right, I'm not seeing any movement. I think we can continue on.
Okay, thank you. So, just to summarize, you see a student and the kid wants to be an engineer, and maybe there are some challenges with math and physics. Well, there are other jobs out there that they can do. And usually people who want to do that are creative. They like to take apart things, figure out how things work. And I personally find it unfortunate that the educational system cannot prevent them to do that with this requirement that maybe was necessary way back when, but that today is not as important. I mean, somebody can code in Python today. I mean, that's way more important than being able to solve a differential equation or to do, a double integration of the weight on a beam. I mean, at some point, yeah, it was important, but today that's not as important. So just keep that in mind if you have a student interested by that. We have some specialty programs here on campus. We have one that's called Plastics and Composites. The data that you see is not going to look very good for all of LA and Orange County, because you have people doing menial tasks in that field, but that's not what we do here at Cerritos College. At Cerritos College, we basically train our students to get an entry-level job at Northrop Grumman and SpaceX. They basically take every single one of our students. And in fact, if we could have more, they would take more. And they're not making $18 an hour at SpaceX or at Northrop Grumman. And they are getting all the benefits you can think of in those companies. And what the students are doing, basically, they are doing layup of composites. As you probably know, a lot of aerospace and aircrafts today are made of composites. So they're not made out of aluminum like it used to be. There's still some aluminum in the plane and some titanium, but a lot of the structures are made out of composites. And we are lucky that a faculty member started that programming at Cerritos in the late 70s, and we have an excellent reputation in the local industry, which allows us to produce technicians that are able to do lamination. So again, kind of like in the terms of collision repair, not every kid is going to want to work on a computer at a desk, bolted to a desk every day. If somebody is more interested in being in the open, working on projects, this is a great field. And again, taking our class PMT 51 is a guaranteed interview at SpaceX and a guaranteed interview at Northrop Grumman. Now, doesn't mean you're going to get the job. You still have to prove that you can pass that interview and you can pass the drug test. But at least that gives you an opening in the doors of those two companies. So keep that in mind. That's an option for some. So this is what I used to teach before I became a dean, computer and numerical control, which, you know, a lot of people use the job machinist because that's the job that we had in the late 1800s. You know, the Industrial Revolution in England started with machinists being able to bore the cylinders of steam engine, and that's what allowed us to have steam engine and rearrange the plants in a more efficient way and move away from rivers. You know, so that's as a long tradition. The manual aspects of machining, you know, the type of work I did when I was an apprentice a long time ago, we don't spend a lot of time on that. We basically just have one class getting you to the basics, and we right away put you on the computer and numerically controlled machines. So if you can see on the picture here in the back, you can see on the right side a computer attached to the machine. That's the way that pretty much all machining is done today. You know, so basically, the computer controls the machine that then does the machining. But we still need somebody in front of the machine that can program the machine so that the machine does what it's supposed to do, and that can kind of monitor how the machine is doing to apply any kind of corrective action that's needed during the machining process. So today, what you would call a machinist actually works on several machines, usually works on 3 or 4 machines. And really what they do is that they make programs for the machine and they monitor the machine, making sure the machine does what it's supposed to do. And typically, the machine can run hours or even days at a time without any operator tending to the machine. So that shows a little pickup in the entry-level wages. You know, that's more in the $22 an hour. If the student is creative, if the student can give feedback to the employer about, hey, you know, what about if we were machining this on that machine, doing this operation at the time of that machine, we could shave the cycle time by 20 seconds and we could make, you know, 200 more parts per day. I can guarantee you that your wage is going to go up, is going to skyrocket. So the student that not only knows how to do this, but is creative and observant of the production and the productivity of the machine can make incredible amounts of money. In fact, can make so much money and work so many hours that they'll call me and say, Nick, I can't believe they're running me for that many hours. I'm tired of being at work. And I remind them about how much are you making per week? And, you know, if they're making $3,000 a week, I say, well, that's the reason why you're making that. And you have to think about, you know, maybe letting your boss know that you need some free time. So some of those jobs, I know that it's hard to believe that people can make that amount of money, but if they are creative and they master the trade, they can make that kind of money. So just keep that in mind. That's an option for some. The one that I started with and that I kind of want to almost finish with is welding. Welding by far has the most job openings. I mean, our phones in the technology division are basically every day we get phone calls nonstop. Are you guys teaching welding? Are you guys teaching welding? And our classes are full every day, all night, all weekends. We'll basically run as many classes as we can to produce welders because there's just endless demand for welders in LA and Orange County. So just keep that in mind. And for LA and Orange County, it was 5,000. You saw that within 25 miles of Norwalk, there were, you know, about 2,000. The demand is just, we just cannot meet demand in welding. And welding, you know, again, there's welding and there's welding. You know, there's welding, low-level welding, which does not require certification. That's going to be $15 an hour. And then there's welding with certification. At Cerritos College, we even provide certification on chromaloy, which is, we're the only community college that does that. The prices per hour is north of $45 an hour for this certification. Another department we have is woodworking. So woodworking, you know, we have some students coming here that, I'm not going to say it's a hobby, but, you know, they want to learn it and they kind of not sure that they want to do that for a career. I mean, it's a great way to learn how to do something with your hands. A lot of female students in that area, a lot of students are a little older that maybe want to see if they can do that as a semi-retirement. There's lots of options. You can be doing some cabinet making, which there are jobs for that, and companies making cabinets. You can do furniture making, which is more like your hobby. You want to make a piece of furniture for your home. And then there's CNC woodworking. Similar to the CNC machining, there are plenty of jobs doing CNC woodworking in Southern California. A lot of companies making guitars, making all kinds of different materials out of wood. And a lot of companies also installing and repairing woodworking equipment. And again, maintenance technician make a pretty good living. If people like to be independent, like to drive their own truck and do different things every day, it's another great option for them. The entry-level job, similar to all the other ones. So I left a fair amount of time for questions because I imagine that you guys would have questions given the information that I provided about, wages, different things, different jobs, different openings. It doesn't take that long to get your certificate of achievement. Some of our certificates, you can get it with 7, 8, 9 classes. And if you take 2 or 3 at a time, like I said earlier, maybe in 2 semesters, you can be done with a certificate of achievement, and you can have a job right away. Some take a little longer, some have more steps, require attendance like on a daily basis. For example, in cosmetology or in automotive, you pretty much have to be a full-time student, especially if you're on the industrial tracks with those brands in automotive. Other ones, you can come at night and take a couple of years to do it and get a better job. So those are all the different options that we have. So let's see if we have any questions.
All right, I have allowed participants to unmute themselves as well as just keep an eye on the chat. So far, nothing in the chat.